I am Adam, Prince of Eternia, defender of the secrets of Castle Grayskull. This is Cringer, my fearless friend. Fabulous. By the power of Grayskull!
I have the
Well, that's a rather good summary of this show. The 2002 He-Man Reboot was a show made by Mike Young Productions and broadcasted on Cartoon Network from 2002 to 2004. By nearly every measure, it is how you should do a reboot of a classic series. So today on Design Dungeon, we'll be seeing how it handled its art direction, how it adapted the story of He-Man, and the show's overall legacy. When it comes to the art and animation of the '02 series, there is a definite influence from comics, especially the DC animated universe that was being developed at the time of this show. The characters' designs are complex and use heroic builds for the vast majority of the characters. Naturally, this style lends itself to the very faithful character designs that update the original characters while staying true to the elements that made them recognizable. Take He-Man, for example. He still has his iconic chest piece and fur loincloth, but there are some changes. Instead of a bowl haircut, he has a mullet, and his Sword of Power takes on a more technological look, which harkens back all the way to the original short comics. Prince Adam himself also gets some much needed changes. He is far smaller and scrawnier than He-Man, making it actually plausible for them to be seen as different people. What's more is that they kept the overall elements of the original Prince Adam, but desaturated his pants to draw more attention to his red jacket and make the design more modern looking. There are so many characters who got really good updates. Trapjaw finally looks imposing, Teela and the Sorceress share a lot of visual elements hinting at their relationship, Ram Man doesn't look like a complete joke. Yet, of all the characters, one is nearly the same as he was. Skeletor. There is little change to his design, and it's likely because there's very little to improve on his design. It was pretty good to begin with. However, they did add a different backstory to him, which explains how he looks the way he does. After all, he does have a skeleton for a head. They do explain that. And we'll get to that, which brings us to... Much like its visuals, the story and lore of the '02 reboot takes a lot from the '85 run, but expands on some aspects while trimming down on others. Much like how Thundercats and She-Ra started, this series begins with a multi-episode TV movie that sets up the series proper. It shows us that Skeletor was once a powerful magician named Keldor, and he became that way after having the bright idea of throwing acid at somebody who had the high ground. Also, with a magical intervention from Horde Prime, but that's in a different episode, just ignore that for now. We also get a look at King Randor, who was appointed king by the Council of Elders, who then proceed to ascend to Castle Grayskull, becoming He-Man's power source. Speaking of He-Man, and by extension Prince Adam, Adam as a character, while still the slacker, is actually motivated to become more active on his own end. Mainly because the first time he turned into He-Man, he had to flee a crucial battle, and Teela held that against him for a while. Which was interesting, but given the show's lighter continuity in the first season, that plot thread didn't get fully fleshed out. The entire reason this happens is because Adam needs to keep He-Man's identity secret, so that Skeletor doesn't just shank him while he's Prince Adam. This is actually quite important because the original version didn't clarify this. In fact, they clarified it in the New Adventures of He-Man, and if you didn't see my video, short summary, it was bad, but that was the one good thing. There are a host of other additions that I did like, such as Orko not being used to fill the obligatory slapstick quota for the episode, even though he really doesn't have much of a narrative purpose outside of just being there. Someone did clarify that, yes, he's kind of inept because he's outside of his home world, but that doesn't really explain what his actual purpose is in the show aside from being comic relief. And I kind of have, if a character's just there for comic relief, they're kind of just wasting time. We have the villains for that. Speaking of the villains, overall, they are pretty good. They are pretty funny when He-Man's kicking their butts. They can also be intimidating when they want to. Evil Lynn has a bit more going on with her, with the faceless one and torn loyalties. She definitely comes off as having a bit more depth than how she was in the original, so that's great. Then there are the things that I thought were not as good. I'm going to rip the band-aid off this one. I really hate that Marlena has a massively reduced role in this version. We don't even know if she's still an astronaut from Earth, and I'm kinda sad about that. Then there's Cringer. Sure, having him not talk is fine, but why? Why oh why did they give him common house cat noises? Sure, the intimidating tiger noises are reserved for Battle Cat, but he's still a big tiger. Don't just give him tiny house cat noises that are the stockiest of stock house cat noises, please. Why? You could have at least pitched them down. The last major issue I have with this show is the score, which is incredibly unremarkable. It is done on the most generic early 2000s canned instruments, which I wouldn't mind if the score wasn't so unimaginative. The OG He-Man used a lot of themes and leitmotifs which made the music memorable. Mostly because, again, limited budget, had to reuse a lot, but that kind of worked in its favor. The only time I found the score on this show to be memorable was when it was strangely calm for a fight scene, and that was very jarring to me. Outside of those small things, it's actually a very good series. I would recommend it. Well, yes, this was a very good show that was well received. Keep in mind, this was a Cartoon Network action show that wasn't produced in studio, so naturally its airtimes were completely inconsistent, coupled with poor toy sales, and the series was canned after only 2 seasons. But at least they got 2 seasons, am I right? Still, this is the last mainline He-Man cartoon we've seen. The only thing that comes close is the She-Ra Netflix series, but that was distinctly isolated from the larger Masters of the Universe lore and continuity. It did manage to have a significant following, so there might be a future for Masters of the Universe, but the end demographic that cling to She-Ra is probably a bit different from what a He-Man series would generally be directed at, let's be honest. Still, that is the end of the He-Man Retrospective. I know this was a bit shorter than the average Design Dungeon episode because I largely do stand by my judgments on the original designs. It's just that they were a bit more refined, so they would pretty much all be 1 point higher, maybe 2, except for Skeletor because, again, they didn't improve on perfection. They didn't need to. Aside from that, that will do it for this episode. If you enjoyed my content, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more. Make sure you hit the bell because YouTube's a bit wonky with that. And leave a comment if you have any feedback or recommendations for a future episode. I'll be seeing you all next time.